Over the last year and a half, I have been devoutly following one of my favorite new bands and seeing how their style is shaped up even before they had released their first album. And that band, of course, is Black Country New Road. After hearing for the first time, the album had quickly become one of my all-time favorite records, and to this day I still hold it in high regard. The emotional and poignant lyrics delivered by Isaac Wood were perfectly matched with the dynamic post-rock soundscape the band provided, which instilled his overwhelming anxiety at the modern world and in various aspects of Isaac's life. While they jokingly compared themselves to the likes of the band Slint, they managed to use similar narrative structures in a completely unique and original way. They managed to touch on a dicey subject like the band they were previously in breaking up over the cancellation of the lead singer, and making a parallel between that dilemma and the emotionally draining demise of a relationship gone stale. It's something that was entirely different from anything coming out in the modern indie scene at that point. So with such an exemplary debut record, they were swift to capitalize on it, and within the following year, they had released a new iteration of one of their songs, track X, which stripped down the instrumentation and gave a more intimate vocal experience, one of which made the lyrics all the more devastating considering the subject matter of the song. During this time, they were doing press for their debut record, trying to generate buzz for its launch, and while giving out one of their interviews, one statement really stuck out to me as peculiar.
If we could get as big as it would be possible for a band like us to be big, that would be good. Like the next Arcade Fire. That's the goal, basically.
Now this statement came off as a little bizarre to me. Their music was not even in the same realm as Arcade Fire, and more than anything came across as just another incident of artists saying weird shit during interviews to generate headline buzz. What I did not foresee is how they would take that and make it serve as their thesis statement for the stylistic revisions they would undergo for their next record, Ants From Up There. Their previous record began with an instrumental intro, but instead of embracing the stylistic wailings of the traditional klezmer, they opt to instead embrace the modern repetitions of minimalism. The next song, Chaos Space Marine, serves as the thesis statement for the album's subject matter. It made perfect sense for this to be the first single on this album, and the symbolism conveyed here is consistently applied throughout the album, from its use of science fiction, transportation, to the newfound internal strife that riddles the singer, Isaac Woods, in his endeavors with new relationships, all of which is sugar-coated with this anthemic veneer that makes the message go down a lot smooth. But in complete contrast to that, Concord shows that the past is lingering and is completely derailing his current relationship, all being done up with this straightforward, melancholic instrumentation provided by the backing band. With its simplistic backing, the song forecasts the shadow that previous relationships are currently looming over, while showing that Isaac has not moved on whatsoever and is desperately clinging onto his past lover, which in turn is creating a rift with the current one. And while actual Concorde planes are grounded today, the allegorical one as described in the song is the driving force in this dilemma, regardless of how involved it actually is. As the lyrics point out, he himself is pursuing the thrills that made his past relationship so joyous, trying to find her light, as he states in the chorus, in spite of him being the only one that is still seeking it out. Concord also brings to light the efforts that are being made by his significant other to try and snap him out of his fantasy and his delusion. These efforts are in turn carried over to the next song, Bread Song, which ends up amplifying a sense of melancholy with its use of orchestral instruments alongside spellbinding guitar. This creates a clear juxtaposition between the two perspectives of the relationship. While it is not used in such a volatile way as it is on one of their earlier songs, Sunglasses, it still manages to make you understand both sides, however skewed from the writer's bias they may be. It's probably my favorite writing technique the band has to offer, since it creates a clearer understanding of the thought process of not only Isaac, but in some convoluted way, what Isaac thinks other people are thinking about. In Bread Song, this technique is used to see the actual distance between them, not the hyperbolic imagery of Isaac being the Chaos Space Marine off in a distant land from earlier in the album. It instills the actual desperation of her one-sided affection, seeing her try to create meager improvements in the hopes of bridging that gap, but ultimately to no avail. She describes how she is christened in as lonely in spite of the relationship. Thus, in a penultimate act of desperation, she tries to define some rules between the two of them. As the song reaches the climax of the crescendo, she proclaims, "Do not eat your toast in my bed," and she reaches the point to where there's not room for any man or particles of bread, proving that she doesn't actually need him then. What? Okay, fine, I'll just shut the fuck up and go back to the analysis. This symbolism capitalizes on the prevailing theme throughout the song about how technology has been one of the things keeping the rift between them as vast as it is. From the opening lines alone, we can see that, where any comfort is met with neglect, as the narrator tries to hold on to Isaac even after his immediate departure into the technological landscape. The bread and the resulting crumbs aren't literal, of course, but are meant to showcase this dependency on technology that is used to shield his vulnerabilities, and the rules are just a way to try and break that. But is that dependency intentional? Good Will Hunting makes that abundantly clear. Now, for this song in particular, I would like to disagree with the artist's interpretation of the lyrics a tad. They stated in interviews that the lyrics are removed from the song that it's named after. I 100% disagree, and here's why. Also, I guess spoiler alert for a 25-year-old movie I'm about to break down. Good Will Hunting is a film about the struggles of a diamond-in-the-rough genius trying to hunt for those with goodwill in his life. From the job prospects he receives and the many people he meets, he struggles through his life to find what is best for his future and who is looking out for his best interests, all of which is conveyed in a way that angsty college students like me can relate to. Now, in the song Good Will Hunting, however, that hunt for goodwill is less about handling the newfound discovery of talent and more about the trust issues that come with prospects of a new relationship. It opens with a brief scene between the two walking and Isaac hoping that she'd fall so that he could catch her, and seeing beyond their short time they've already spent together into the distant future of their lives. This juxtaposes a song like Science Fair, where we hear of a past accident with him trying to run away from it and keeping his dignity. But this sentiment is short-lived as we witness an exchange between the two, with this buoyant and elastic guitar highlighting each line spoken. Ending the exchange is this deflating feeling of fear that makes each line in it more evasive than the last, ultimately leading up to the chorus, which is the culmination of surrounding conversations from those around him. It goes from compliments, if you could think a comparison to Billie Eilish as a compliment, to the announcement from his girlfriend that she is moving to Berlin for a while, and some reassurance from others that it will work out. This all sends Isaac thinking into the past and how these insecurities are formed, and how he became the Chaos Space Marine. Returning again to the repetition of the exchange and the chorus, it is now instilled with this sense of frustration as reflected in the vocals and the noisy guitars that ensue. With these emotions articulated, we see on Haldern how it played out after that, and from the lethargic and slow-moving ensemble, it spells it out even before a single word is spoken. It paints a picture of an aftermath without directly showing the eruption that happened in the time after Good Will Hunting. Without an ounce of malice in it, it shows that moment of vulnerability between the two. Even with the attempts of trying to avoid it and escaping from it by rising out of the ceiling, the sincere embrace can no longer be neglected, and manages to break him emotionally, and through one of the many allegories of the album, physically as well. This embrace is met with complete approval of those around him when it's revealed in the song that they were encircling him so that he couldn't escape this confrontation. While at the same time, the instrumentation manages to set the scene and help convey the emotions that would be otherwise lost within the expression in words, with the piano cascading, the horns and guitars beating as if capturing the moment their pulses aligned together. The next song, Mark's Theme, acts as a reprieve within the storytelling of the album. While the song is without words, it acts as an homage to a relative of one of the band members who had just recently passed away. In interviews, they described him as one of the most supportive people to the band, and even though it may seem like another display of virtuosity by them, it's an incredibly endearing piece of music, and I enjoyed it as a short break from the storytelling to try and set you at ease before the final act of the album. After that short reprieve, in The Place Where He Inserted the Blade, we see how things have shaped up after the events of Haldern, and as such, makes the song feel, in my opinion, as if it's the emotional centerpiece of the album. It is the most blunt track on the album, which, to me, signifies the strain Isaac's relationship has tried to withstand in its long-distance form, on both ends. And despite the title being The Place Where He Inserted the Blade, I do mean both ends. While you may think this is a stretch, I think the title is a double entendre, where the lyrics can be applied to either of them depending on the way you look at it. The dour piano lays out the woeful exchange, talking about the isolation and fear that the unfamiliar territory of Berlin put her in, and the effects it has had on the relationship with Isaac. The unfamiliar territory mentioned in the beginning of the song brings with it the risk of pain and the sense of unease around other people, even around those who are trying to help give support. But the greatest risk shown is the risk of rejection from the one you love, and knowing his past experiences, as such, he wavers in his affirmation when he says the rest of his body is hers. This desperation carries throughout the song, and like with Good Will Hunting, we see that he is still worried that she has forgotten, and despite this burden, he has no way of expressing it. With this disconnect between them, the frustration manifests in the form of a blunt statement. Show me the place where he inserted the blade. While previously this type of confrontation and clear articulation was met with equal embrace, it is now met with rejection, and the tug that's between them is now too long of a string to be sustained, and he doesn't know how to sustain it, ending the song by asking where he can tie his string and trying to make it work, but by then it's already too late, and he's too lost in his delusion. And all that's left at this point in the song is the chorus trying to stay by his side despite his discomfort. The song, in a way, parallels their song Sunglasses, in that it captures the end of a relationship clearly and blends the emotional states of the relationship into something that puts you in the perspective of both sides in it. Unlike Sunglasses, however, there is no contempt, nor any vitriol, nor any exhaustion. Only overwhelming anxiety, desperation, and denial that makes it a bittersweet song to listen to. The next song, Snow Globes, tries to deal with the emotional toll that has been dealt to Isaac once again, and how it has shaken up his world. But instead of taking on the perspective of Isaac, it instead offers a bystander's point of view on the situation, looking at how everything has sent him further catapulting into his regressive obsession with the past. It begins with a desolate guitar strumming and is only met with other instruments chiming in, but not completely in sync with one another, and it feels completely in tune with the songwriting. It begins by describing the clamp that has been one of the prevailing symbols throughout all of their music, and how it has once again broken him just like it had prior on For the First Time. It then goes on to illustrate his glimmer of hope that it could still work out, similar to how it was on The Place Where He Inserted the Blade, and how he worships that hope religiously and clings to that sentiment through the battleship of souvenirs that furnishes those memories. The depiction of Isaac on this song, while hopeful for his improvement, shows the devastation and delusion that he's left in. He's filling in the void, trying to make himself whole in a way that he himself is described as incredibly porous. Despite knowing this, he does it regardless in the hopes of maintaining his catatonic emotional state where nothing changes and is never shaken up. Similar to a shelved snow globe, it will never be relived, and only to be observed. The song ends with him chanting, "Oh God of weather, Henry knows, snow globes don't shake on their own," until his voice breaks into a shout, alongside the instrumentation climaxing simultaneously, as if the song finally manages to break through and connect to Isaac. Which leads me to the final song, Basketball Shoes. Similar to how Opus ended for the first time optimistically, Basketball Shoes shows a return to normalcy even after the end of his relationship. It begins by laying down another heavy, slow-moving guitar line, with Isaac recapping everything that's happened so far, having a Concorde fly through his life, dismantling it, and leaving him feeling insignificant. With what remains, he looks back at what's left in his life, and he thinks back to the many times that this has happened before in his life in his previous relationships. But in the second section of the song, it shows that these memories are still ingrained in him, and are still as painful and torturous as ever. Despite the springy lead into the second section, it reveals the darker emotions that lie underneath the surface. The song erupts into this chaotic indie anthem that is equally triumphant and agonizing, ending the album in a way that they only could. At which point, it became clear to me what their attempt to become the next Arcade Fire actually meant. It wasn't some smoothing down of their sound to try and make it more digestible for a mainstream audience. It was their way of embracing the unique anthemic style of indie rock to make every moment on the album equal parts nostalgic, romantic, and harrowing, but somehow oddly optimistic. Ants from Up Here captures the conflicted mind state that comes with the territory of beginning a new relationship. I think there's a larger parallel to be made between both of Black Country New Roads' albums. They both represent similar stories with similar conclusions, but with different attitudes and different angles. While For the First Time feigns an optimistic conclusion, its lethargic anger makes it blindsided. The frustration on the record provides this sardonic and cynical outlook on modern culture, giving it an interesting insight into his world and how the relationships he has had are affected by them. Ants from Up Here focuses on mainly the relationship aspect, with emphasis being put on himself and how his insecurities change the relationship's trajectory. It made the record feel more personal, and I find myself relating heavily to the themes on the album, which is why I found it so hard to write about it, but also why I needed to write about it instead of following a looser script like I usually do. I wanted to try and get across how moving the record was to me, so spending a large amount of time talking about each song felt like a natural conclusion to me. To be honest, I hold both of their albums in equal regard. I think they match each other perfectly and tell an interesting narrative. One tells about the impending demise of a relationship, while the other deals with the frailty of starting a new one, which is why they have continued to be one of my favorite bands right now. And even with an uncertain future, I still await their next record eagerly. What did you guys think of this attempt to make a video essay/review of a new album? I thought I'd try and mix up the format because honestly I was getting a bit stale. Because honestly it was getting a bit boring trying to do what I had done with my other videos. So doing this larger video talking about an album that I sincerely, wholeheartedly enjoy was something renewing to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know if you didn't in the comments below. I'll try and read them. And I'll see you guys in the next time.